What is up, Waffle Gang? I do hope you are well. My name is Mark, and today we're covering some r/AmI, the butthole. And we're just going to jump straight in to today's stories. Much love, guys. Now, our first story does come with an update attached, and is from TA Sunheart. Am I the arsehole for not financially helping family and friends, despite being able to? My son Nick was born with a congenital heart defect 17 years ago. It required a $60,000 surgery in Israel if he was to survive past 12 months. I've spent the first 3 months of his life running around begging people and searching for money. My parents gave us $100. They had well-paying jobs and guaranteed state pensions. When I asked my brother for help, he mumbled something about needing to save for his daughter's college. She never went, by the way. Anyone who met her could have told him that much. They did regular vacations overseas though. My department of 40 at work donated $30 and a card. At one point I was seriously searching for ways to sell my kidney and liver. My in-laws sold their apartment for $35k. Best friend gave me another $7k, which was all he had. Accepting his help was one of the few times I cried in my adult life. I sold my car and every piece of furniture and electronics that wasn't bolted to the walls. My in-laws moved in and we spent the next 5 years living together, 5 people crammed into a 2-bedroom. Surgery was a success. As fate has it, I started a hustle and it took off. After years of hard work, I moved our HQ to a Central European country to be closer to our EU clients. Even discounting for about 2/3 of my wealth that is tied up in the business, I am a multi-millionaire. My in-laws now have a 4-bedroom house. We pay for them to go on vacations 3 to 4 times a year, or did before 2020. My son is a hard worker who makes me a very proud father. I can't say that I hate those who didn't help back in the day. Hate is a strong word. Rather, I feel like I've learnt my lesson and don't expect anything from them. I don't invite my parents for visits. They are welcome to pay for their flights and a hotel room, but I won't cover their expenses like I do with the in-laws. My brother asked for a loan to start his business 5 years ago. I said the time wasn't right. 2 months ago, his daughter got into a car accident, drunk driving. Nothing seemingly life-threatening, but a lot of nasty scarring on her legs that require a costly cosmetic surgery. I suggested he looked into downsizing as I'm focusing on helping my kids get a good education. Old co-workers who wanted to join my business once it took off were told to apply through the regular process. Except for my best friend. He's been my partner from the start and I sleep better at night knowing we got each other's backs. It comes without saying there have been lots of very unhappy people in my life. In our culture, you're expected to support your community and family, do favours. Nepotism is very much an ingrained thing. You are supposed to bring over your family if you're lucky enough to root yourself in the Western world, help friends immigrate. My parents told me to my face they're ashamed of me and how the Western culture has changed me. I've been called many things, way worse than arsehole and heartless. After hearing my story, tell me Reddit, am I though? Edit, to those wondering why my parents had a pretty lukewarm response, if you can even call it that. The surgery had a 40% success rate. They thought we should let nature run its course and instead try for a new baby. It may sound horrendous to Westerners, but it's not that cold of a statement to someone in our home country. But obviously, wife and I didn't take it well. And edit 2 where OP is responding to someone, I will talk to my wife about helping our niece. I stand by what I said, it's on her for putting herself in this position and her parents to help her fix it. So I won't cover the whole cost, but I will ask my wife if we should cover half. The more I think about it, the more I'm leaning towards this being the right answer. There's a bit that really jumped out to me and it said, in our culture you're expected to support your community and family and do favours, but where did they support you? Sure, your parents gave you $100. I mean, that's like a token gesture, right? But the paragraph where you said, that they should let nature run its course, just set it off. And I know you said that's something that comes across horrendous to Westerners, and it absolutely does. I was like, what? I'd be absolutely mortified if someone said that about my child when you're trying to do your best for them and scramble around selling everything you can. And then to be told that, oh, no way, I'd cut people like that out of my life, absolutely. And it really pleases me that, you know, you was looking after your in-laws after what they did for you, and your best friend too. That really pleased me in the end. But we're going to cover a couple of comments now and then move over to the update. But Sad Responsibility says, not the arsehole, your in-laws sold their 35k house to help you. Your best friend gave you all he had to help your son. Nobody else helped you or even pretended to help you and your son. Your in-laws deserve everything you're giving to them because they were one of the only people there for you at your absolute lowest. You were going to sell your kidney for your son because nobody else helped you. Having your old co-workers who did not help you beg to get into your business don't deserve it. And not only that, but it is 100% fair that they are to apply just as anyone else. Your parents are just as angry at you for not sharing your success. If you can't handle me at my worst, then you don't deserve me at my best. That goes for you and your son in relation to the rest of the family. Not the arsehole, but your parents and old co-workers certainly are. And Pumpernickel Brot says, not the arsehole, and in quotes, in our culture you're expected to support the community. And then says, they didn't support you when it was a literal life and death situation for your son. You don't owe them anything. Good for you that everything went so well in your life. Keep supporting those that supported you, like your in-laws and best friend. And then Rook says, not the arsehole, they're not obligated to help you and you're not obligated to help them. Don't help them. But your parents' comment about let nature run its course and instead try for a new baby, like what the fuck do they smoke? Who tells that to anyone? They're essentially told to let your son die and provide them with another grandchild. Should have gone no contact then and there. Nobody needs such people in their lives. And BCP says, not the arsehole, also your best friend is amazing. Brought tears to my eyes to read that he gave you everything he had. That's a true friend, and I'm really glad that you guys are successful now. And Jesse Wessie says, not the arsehole, sorry, but I wouldn't be paying for your niece's cosmetic surgery. Not because of what happened in the past with your brother, but because she's old enough to understand why you shouldn't drink and drive. And now let's move over to the update to see what that says. So, update, am I the arsehole for not financially helping family and friends despite being able to? So it's been a couple of months. I've learnt my lesson not to ask 17-year-old kids on Reddit questions about real life and made some decisions. First, a lot of you did make valid suggestions that I took to heart. I spoke to my parents candidly about why I distanced myself from them. They were clearly ashamed, and I think that's the shame and pride that kept them from reaching out and apologising years ago. My mum kept her face covered with her hands most of the call. She was clearly sad. Anyway, I ended up telling them that I would never want to see them go destitute, so if they are in poor health or need help with basic necessities, I'm obviously a call away. Otherwise, things have stayed the same. Next, about my niece, here's where I disagree hard with most Redditors. She's a 20-something girl who made a tremendously stupid mistake. She took down a pole, driving drunk, and will pay for that with her physical appearance and health for the rest of her life. It could have been worse. Thankfully, that's all it was. I talked to her, and as a first step we paid for her initial scar treatment, some silicone dressings, steroid injections to improve the healing. They can't do the removal surgery until they heal properly and things settle down, so it could be another 6 months to a year before they reassess. She asked if I can help her find rehab. She wants to pay for it herself. She admitted to having a problem, and I won't go into why she started drinking, but I hope none of the haters have the same reason to turn to a bottle. I also talked to my brother that he's got a year to come up with half the cost of her surgery. If he doesn't come through, we'll have a conversation, but I think the fire is lit under his ass, and I'm covering half for sure. I remind people we aren't prosecutors and judges, so when it comes to moral judgments, we should do what we believe is right. I stand by my choices to keep my family at arm's length, but not let them fall into poverty if it comes to it, and I support my niece in her attempt to better herself. Thanks to everyone who commented and offered advice. Highway Girl will give you a separate shout out. Lastly, please don't send me requests for money. I've read every sob story under the sun after my last post. I'm not an idiot, wasn't born yesterday, and I know that any 12-year-old with a keyboard can write a mean tearjerker. I offer tremendous monetary support and my time to local organisations that I can actually seek providing support to those in need, so I sleep well at night. Don't bother cursing at me for being heartless. If you're in real need, seek assistance from your local organisations. Best of luck, everyone, and take care. And to me, it just sounds like a very mature, who knows what they want in life. And, you know, I think they were totally right in the way that they were going, like keeping the family at arm's length. But, you know, they don't want to see As he said in this story, he doesn't want to see his parents destitute and struggling, and he wants to help the people that, he does have love for in some ways, but while still keeping that boundary. And I think that was the best way possible, in my opinion anyway. I'm sure some of you have your own opinions too, but that was just my opinion on this. But what do you guys think about this story? Let me know in the comments below. And our next story comes from Joe1934. Am I the arsehole for burying my neighbour's dog without telling them? My 34 male neighbour's 30s male female went through a difficult time recently for reasons that is not my place to go into. To recover, they went abroad. They left the dog at home and arranged to pay someone to come feed and walk the dog. They'd been gone for about 2 weeks when I found their dog under a hedge between our yards. It was very clearly deceased. I don't know what happened to it. There was no obvious trauma. Lest you ask, no, I did not harm the dog in any way. I was at a bit of a loss because I, A, didn't have the dog walker's contact information, and B, I did not know when my neighbours would be returning. I debated trying to contact my neighbours. On the one hand, they probably want to know and to come home. On the other hand, bad news keeps, and they were already on vacation trying to cope with the aftermath of a difficult experience. I thought about what I would want if I was in their shoes, and I decided what I'd want is for someone to bury my pet in my yard and tell me when I returned. Initially, I'd be upset because I was surprised, but in a couple of days, I would get over the surprise, see the sense in it, and be grateful. So that's what I did. I buried the dog in a nice corner of their backyard. I wrote a note asking them to give me a call on their return and slid it under their door. I also stuck a note labelled dog walker on the door with tape, which asked the dog walker to give me a call. The dog walker did give me a call a couple of days later, and I explained what had happened and what I had done. I said that I had not contacted my neighbours and the dog walker could make their own choice on whether to inform them of the dog's passing. My neighbours came back a couple of weeks later. They were surprised and very, very unhappy the dog walker did not contact them to tell them what had happened, and of course neither did I. They don't blame me for the dog's death, but they do feel very strongly that I should have contacted them immediately. I expected them to feel that way initially, but it has been a few days and there is no sign yet of those feelings diminishing in the intensity. If there had been anything they could have done for their pet, or if they could have been on vacation for fun instead of emotional recovery, I would have tried to reach them. On the other hand, I tried to do what I thought was best given the situation. On the other, kind of understand how they feel. I don't know. Am I the arsehole? I don't want to second guess or criticise their decision to go abroad or their decision to leave the dog at home with the supervision of a paid caretaker. Those were their decisions to make, not mine or anyone else's. Edit. I've read many comments but don't have a ton of time to respond, so here goes. 1. Their major complaint, as far as I can tell, they were in rough emotional shape when they left and things are not better now, is that I did not tell them that their dog had died. As far as I know, they don't have an issue with the fact that I buried the dog or that I buried it on their property. 2. The dog walker was explicitly responsible for the dog. There is no question that the dog walker is an arsehole for not contacting them immediately. I'm not going to participate in any other speculation about the dog walker because I have no information. 3. A number of commentators have said that burying the dog prevented my neighbours from doing what they wanted with the carcass. In the first place, they don't seem to have an issue with me burying it, and in the second place, that makes no sense. Burying a carcass is not permanent. It can be dug up and reinterred and cremated, though maybe not taxidermied. Also, burial is a reasonable short-term storage option. It limits oxygen, keeps off scavengers, and keeps the carcass cool. If you bury it deep enough, which I did. I could not put the dog in my freezer without chopping it up because it would not fit, even if I emptied my freezer, so I'm really kind of upset about the comments that said I should have preserved the carcass in some other way. In my mind, I could have just chucked the carcass under their deck and left it for them to find, and they'd have the trauma of finding it after the possums and raccoons had been at it, but not been mad at me. The question is really, should I have told them and probably caused them to return earlier, not whether I should have buried the dog. Now this is one of those ones that could go a whole different bunch of ways because I think this is a very personal thing, what you want to do with your pet when they pass away. So we're going to cover straight to the comments. We're going to go with just Obsolete saying, you're the arsehole, as is 1000% the dog walker. Their dog died. It wasn't a close call. It wasn't something that could be dealt with later. Their dog died and no one bothered to tell them. They didn't get to decide where and how to bury their dog, or even if they wanted to do cremation instead because their dog died and no one told them. Death isn't something that just waits until after a trip, unless someone is literally unreachable and there is no other option. And yeah, I got an opinion says, you're the arsehole. While I understand your reasoning, that was not your decision to make. Your feelings are not universal. You don't even know what they would have wanted to do with the dog's remains. That wasn't your dog to bury. It wasn't your yard to dig in. It wasn't your grief to protect. It was theirs. You didn't put yourself in their shoes. You put them in yours. I think dog walker is mostly to blame, but the fact you took matters that were none of your business into your own hands makes you the arsehole. And Squibbery says, no one's an arsehole here. You made the decision you thought was right. Also, the dog walker called you a couple of days later. Shouldn't they have noticed the dog was missing way before then? And Garden Good to Grow says, not the arsehole, you cared enough to do something. You could have just put the corpse in their yard and ignored the whole situation. They are upset and you are the scapegoat. No good deed goes unpunished. The dog walker is the arsehole because it died on their watch and they didn't tell the owner. And Terra says, you're the arsehole, it was not your decision to make. Any of it. Withholding information, burying their dog, this is all stuff they wanted to do themselves. You know what I did when my cat died? I had her cremated and I keep her ashes in an urn and a locket. My neighbours buried their dog themselves and made a gravestone by hand. Others have their pets buried in cemeteries. All of them want to be there to say goodbye to their pet before their body is gone. Depending on the dog's age, they might have wanted an autopsy on it. You might have had good intentions, but that doesn't matter. You and the dog walker both hurt them deeply. The dog walker is in a whole different ballpark because I'm real curious about why the dog was outside by itself and why they didn't contact you for 2 days, like they weren't coming over regularly. You only considered what you would have wanted and did not consider your neighbour's preferences at all. You should apologise, but don't expect forgiveness anytime soon, or possibly ever. And Ardiki says, not the arsehole, but I don't think it was the right choice you made. The owners aren't the arseholes either, but I think their choice of leaving the dog at home and having someone come over occasionally was a poor one. The dog should have been boarded if no one could come over and look after them properly. Live-in house/pet sitting. Most dogs are very social and don't like going from living with their people all the time to having someone come over to feed them occasionally. The dog walker seems sus. It took them way too long to contact you, and it wouldn't surprise me if they were negligent and caused the dog's death, whether through something they did or something they didn't do. And now I turn this one to you guys. What do you guys think of this situation and how would you deal with it? What do you think happened? Let me know in the comments below. And our next story comes from Throwaway Dapper. Am I the arsehole for letting my father-in-law write me into his will over his 2 daughters? I, 35 male, and my wife, 32 female, have been married for 7 years, and we have 2 kids now. My father-in-law is an older man who is somewhat stuck in his older, more male-centric worldview. Because of this, he always has treated me like the son he never had, going so far to call me a son in front of his friends and stuff. He's invited me on trips to go with him hunting, boating, and all sorts of other things. He also helped me get my current job. This has caused a lot of problems with my wife, and she calls father-in-law a misogynist and all sorts of things. While I agree with her that it is awkward, I try not to blame old people for being stuck in their past so much. Well, the other day I was helping father-in-law with something and he brought up the fact that he was probably not going to live longer, especially with COVID-19 and stuff. Not sure why, because he is already vaccinated. Well, he basically told me he always wanted a man he could trust to leave his money to and take care of the family, and that I would be it. He showed me a copy of his will, and while most heirlooms and other things were left to his daughters, the lion's share of his money was left to me with instructions to take care of his daughters. He asked me if I would honour the terms, and I said that of course I would, and didn't really think much of it because me and my wife share finances anyways. I don't really keep things from my wife, so I went home and told her about it, and she completely freaked out on me. She said I was feeding into his bullshit and I should have declined being placed into his will. She called her sister and now they're both freaking out about it. I have no idea what he would have done if I said, don't give it to me, but I know that I don't plan to try and steal their money. I mean, my wife will own what I own anyways. I'm not really sure what to do because my wife and I never fight, but I really wish this could blow over. Am I the arsehole for letting my father-in-law leave his inheritance to me instead of his 2 daughters? Just a couple of things because it keeps coming up in the comments. My wife is much better at finances than me, and she even makes more money than me. I never grew up in a stable household and didn't really learn how to manage money, but I learned a lot from her family. I married into an upper class family and they have always treated me great and never brought it up, but I still try to fit in and not make waves. That's why I said I'm not trying to be confrontational about the misogyny thing, because they always get on their dad for it anyways. Yeesh, yes, you're going to be the arsehole in this situation because you are playing into that misogyny. I'm afraid you are. It's as simple as that, really. And there's other factors that come into play as well. I mean, you said that your wife owns what you own, but what about the rest of the sisters that's getting this money? And in a legal matter, if you've inherited it, you own it. So if you did divorce your wife, if you did fall out for some reason, you have claim to all that money, unless there's some sort of clause in the will for it. But you will have rights to that money and not them. They should be concerned about it. But Green Seraphima says, are you married to your father-in-law or his daughter? You've been with your wife long enough to know that his attitude upsets her. You should never have accepted this without talking to your wife first. You're the arsehole. And Old says you're the arsehole not because you let him do what he wants with his money, but because it seems to me that whenever you were on these bonding trips with your father-in-law, you never seemed to challenge his misogyny and advocate for your wife and sister-in-law. Shame on you for allowing him to think he was right. And Adept 1 says, he's a misogynist and you are downplaying it. This isn't old people being old. He's a sexist and you're jumping along for the ride. To answer the question, not the arsehole because you can't control what he put in his will, but you're the arsehole for excusing his behaviour and not telling him he needs to leave the money directly to his kids. And Super Discussion says, you're the arsehole. Are you kidding? You do feed into your father-in-law's misogyny, no questions. And what bullshit is that? Your wife owns what you own. Even if, what about sister-in-law? Would you split with sister-in-law, or will you graciously say that you will take care of her if she would get in trouble? How would you feel if your father did that? And Purple Dot says, you're the arsehole. Frankly, I would leave someone over this. I understand why it doesn't seem like a big deal to you, because you don't deal with sexism all the fucking time, but it would be a huge betrayal in my mind. And Alan Greenspan's Dinger says, and quotes, I try not to blame old people for being stuck in the past so much, and then says, well, why would you ever consider challenging an unjust status quo when you're reaping the benefits? You're the arsehole. And finally, Potentially Knock says, you're the arsehole, you're feeding into his bullshit. If you do get the money, you should immediately give them their share. The fact that he thinks his daughters need to be taken care of is stupidly paternalistic. Now, I turn this one to you guys. What do you guys think of this situation and how would you deal with it if you was the wife? Let me know in the comments below. Now, once again, guys, thank you for being here today, for taking the time out of your day to be here. It's absolutely incredible. And thank you to all the members as well. It means the absolute world for doing you. It's just absolutely incredible seeing the new members join up all the time. And I think I'm just sat here talking on the microphone and you guys are just, the level of support just always blows me away. So thank you so much. And hopefully, if you enjoyed the content, of course, I will see you in the next one. Take care, guys. Much love.
I've been thinking that I can't let you go. Hey, can you hear